Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and as always, I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation, all things fasting. However, today we're going to talk about the top 5 non-food, non-fasting practices to better manage your blood sugar, reduce insulin resistance, and get better fat loss results with your fasting lifestyle. So,
nice.
I know it's a big promise, lots of words for today's conversation, but we have a top hit list of actions that you can put into your day-to-day life now in terms of your fasting lifestyle to help improve your results. So before we dive into that, Tommy, I want to welcome in all the new listeners. If you are new to the Fasting for Life podcast, welcome to the Fasting for Life family. Thanks for giving us a shot. If you want to know more about us and our story and our transformation with fasting, why we come each and every week for the last 4 years, bringing you an episode, diving into the research, applying it to a lifestyle, shifting that dieting mindset, all of those things, hear our story of how it transformed our lives. Head back to episode 1, give you a little perspective on who we are and why we do what we do. If you're a long-term listener, thank you so much for listening in and being on this journey with us. I want to give a shout out, Tommy, to one of our 5-star reviews. Yes, these are our favorite kind. If you follow the show, we appreciate the follow, the download, the subscribe, the like, the share, whatever buttons we're supposed to click nowadays.
Yeah.
That allows us to continue to make an impact. And we truly are grateful for that. So shout out to the most recent 5-star review that came in on May 28th. And the title is just Awesome Podcast. So thank you, Best More. I never understand the naming mechanisms here, but I love some of the names. So shout out to you, Tommy. Let's break it down real quick.
Yeah. And Best More says, been listening to the podcast for 8 months, learned so much. I was looking for a way to lose weight that was different from all those ways that I've tried and failed in the past. And a friend suggested intermittent fasting. That's awesome. And found this podcast. Dr. Scott and Tommy have changed my life. Wow. And I never thought I could go without food for any period of time, an extended period of time. But I've proven that wrong to myself. And I've lost over 40 pounds since October. That's incredible. And this podcast has changed a lot about how I view food and made losing weight feel easy. This is an excellent podcast with factual, medically sound information that anyone can understand. I highly recommend this podcast. Wow. Thank you so much for the shout out. That's incredible. Appreciate you taking the time to leave that note for everybody too.
Now listen, this is incredible. But you know what I love about this is that this person took the actions that we talk about, that we've taken.
Yes.
And I'm sure it was messy action.
Sure.
Right. And they talk about food and the empowerment of going without food for a certain period of time. But today's conversation is not going to be about food or your fasting window. It's going to be about other things you can do to create a lifestyle of better blood sugar management and reducing your possibility or probability of developing or furthering your insulin resistance, which leads to diabetes, heart disease, cardiometabolic issues, metabolic syndrome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And 8 out of the top 10 reasons why people die here in the United States from lifestyle-induced conditions. So we want to empower you with all that being said, that today's episode is going to be very actionable. And Tommy, let's dive into the top non-food, non-fasting action steps that we can take to better our blood sugar results and ultimately our fat loss with a fasting lifestyle. So I'm going to tee this up to you, man. Which one do you want to start with? Because we have a long list here.
Well, I kind of want to start off with what we do first thing in the morning, because I think
you had to go here.
I think that's a good domino, because what you do first thing in the morning kind of sets the stage for what you're going to do later on in the day. It sends some subconscious cues. You take a certain action or a lack thereof, and you remember it all throughout the day. So what you do first, really kind of matters.
Well, here we are. So we're going to categorize these next couple of things that you do first thing in the morning.
Hmm.
And we're going to put them under the stress resiliency component. So, as
Okay.
we know, stress is a driver of insulin resistance, it's a driver
Hmm.
of cortisol. And we're going to really focus on supporting what we call the HPA axis. And that's your hypothalamus, pituitary gland, adrenal glands.
Hmm.
And your adrenal glands create, under an acute stress, they have a short term activation and cortisol increases, fight or flight is triggered, and then eventually levels return to normal. But in today's world, we have a lot of chronic stressors. We have devices, we have notifications, we have, especially this year with what's coming up in November, with everything that's going on in the world, with social
Yeah.
media, everything is everything is, the world's on fire, right? Like everything is a problem, and we are constantly bombarded with this stuff. So we work really hard to
Yeah.
protect. We talk about that in other episodes, and how we adopt this lifestyle and control what you can control. But
Protect
this
your
stress
input.
response, protect your inputs, right? So
Hmm.
the chronic stress world that we live in is a sustained activation of this stress response or this HPA axis. Cortisol can't keep up, and ultimately you end up with a dysfunction
Mm.
in this process. So if we're talking about stress resiliency, there's going to be a few others. We'll go from how we're going to start our day to practices that fall into the mind body exercise meditation category here in just a minute.
Hmm.
But let's just rip the Band-Aid off. If we want to protect this stress response, right, and this cortisol response, because I'll go into the science here in just a minute. We don't want. How am I going to say this? So I'm burying the lead here because I want you to drop the bomb in just a second. The reason we're going to mention these first two things in the morning, and this I can speak to personally, which I will in a second. Cortisol response, stress response, HPA axis. It can cause insulin resistance by counteracting the effects of insulin.
Mm.
If you're new, insulin takes the energy from the food we eat and it shuttles it into our cell, and or it stores it in our liver or as fat. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So cortisol is a glucocorticoid and a counter insulin hormone that can impair your insulin receptors or your insulin sensitivity. We just did an episode a few episodes back on insulin sensitivity, and it suppresses secretion from your pancreas. So when your cortisol stress response levels are elevated, such as during stress or chronic stress, right, the body will not be able to compensate for the insulin resistance, which will lead to abnormal blood sugar, eventually high blood sugar, impaired glucose tolerance, which can be a problem in the development of prediabetes and all of the comorbidities that go with that, but also a big problem in people that already have prediabetes, undiagnosed, diagnosed, or
Yes.
they're on this blood sugar pathway. So in
Yeah.
the morning, we wake up, Tommy, bomb drop.
We generally will reach for something caffeinated, right? Like that's a big part of the morning. But
Intermittent fasting 101.
yeah,
Black coffee.
Yeah, black coffee, right? Like grab it as soon as you can. And I've been guilty of that for sure for years. But here's the thing about your physiology first thing in the morning. You are in a state of dehydration from your overnight cycle. Your salt levels are low and your water levels are low, but your blood sugar, insulin, and cortisol, as well as estrogen and testosterone, all are coming up in the morning as part of your wake up cycle. And so the problem is when your blood volume is lower, your dehydration is up, your salt levels are lower, and cortisol levels are up. The problem there is that you have a perfect storm to potentially further insulin resistance if you pour more fuel onto that fire, like right away. So what would be a lot more helpful to do rather than reaching for some more caffeine and pushing that further?
I'm cringing, but I do
I
this
know.
now, but I'm
I know.
cringing for everybody listening. We're going to get hate mail on this one.
Lose so many listeners right
Other
now.
than that one time when our ads went crazy and like played for 30 minutes an episode, and like everybody was like, what the heck is this? The show used to be great. What are you doing with ads? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, crap. The tech broke. Okay, yeah, we need to fix it. Other than that, we don't get a lot of hate mail, but I feel like we might get a little bit on this one.
Yeah, from all the coffee drinkers out there. But if you switched it around and you said, wait a minute, what could I do right now to better my physiology, better my physiological state, better my blood concentrations right now? If you reached for some water and some salt first thing in the morning and just pushed off that caffeine by just a little bit, maybe 30, 45 minutes, An hour? You you give me the thumbs up, like keep going,
60,
keep
60 to
going.
90 minutes, 60
60 to
minutes
90
minimum.
minutes? Okay. So, and you don't have
That's
to
personal
even,
experience.
yeah.
Like, and
What if
we've
you
talked
didn't even
about this.
start there?
Right,
Like,
right.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Okay, okay. I see what you're
right?
saying. So I'm like, just, I'm a rip the band-aid off kind of guy.
Yeah,
So you're
sure, sure.
saying incrementally push it.
Sure. What if you started
Okay,
with
okay,
20 minutes, 30 minutes,
okay.
and
Got
then
it.
you said, okay, I can go a little bit longer probably. But the
Good
cool
cat,
thing
bad
is there
cow.
that you're actually diluting the concentration of blood sugar, insulin, and cortisol that you need to wake up, you need for your proper wake up cycle, but you're not going to need it for much longer after that. So if you can kind of recalibrate your blood volume and blood concentrations at that point before you spike more cortisol into the mix, that is a driver of what your metabolism is doing throughout the day. That's also going to be a driver for cravings, for feelings of like those blood sugar dips that can come and in the late morning or going into the early afternoon. If you can level things out now, if you're used to having one of those midday slumps, this can really curb those midday slumps. So, I mean, this is a powerhouse right there, right now. So I know it can feel a little uncomfortable to change up your morning routine a little bit, but man, this can have some really, really beneficial effects.
We can do a whole episode just on this, but I don't want to do
Hmm.
that because we have a lot of other fun things to share. So the delaying of the coffee, 30 to 60 minutes, why does it matter? Right. So it allows cortisol levels to start decreasing.
Hmm.
Right. Now, if you wake up and you are just like peeling your face off of the pillow, then we need to look at your nighttime routine
Yeah, what
and
happened
then your
last night?
morning routine. Right.
Yeah.
So we need to go back. And then guess what? The next tip we're going to talk about on one of the top non-fasting, non-food ways to manage your blood sugar and reduce your insulin resistance and get better fat loss results with your fasting lifestyle is going to be sleep.
Mm.
But your cortisol naturally, so adenosine levels come up as well, 90 to 20 minutes. Excuse me. So you want to get to the 60 to 90 minute mark first, because that's going to let cortisol start to do its natural rhythm.
Mm.
But then adenosine also, 90 to 20 minutes after waking can allow the adenosine levels to rise slightly, which can make caffeine more effective.
Oh,
So
okay. Now we have a better reason to do it too.
it can also reduce the risk of caffeine dependency. So you're
Mhm.
going to allow your body to naturally rely on its normal noradrenaline and cortisol waking rhythms.
Mm.
And the second component of this, okay, well, what do you do if you delay the coffee? You got to, this is like habit training 101.
Okay.
The number one failure we see in lifestyle adaptation is you remove a practice, but you don't put a new one in place.
Yeah. It leaves
So
a
we're going to
gap.
delay coffee. Personal experience, when I started doing this, it's a two-piece equation. We're going to talk about the hydration component here in just a second. And I started delaying my coffee. That afternoon slump, even after reversing my prediabetes and my fasting insulin number is now under 5,
Mm-hmm.
I would still feel the 1 to 3 p.m. kick where I would
Mm.
like want to go to take a nap. I wasn't even eating
Yeah.
lunch.
Yeah.
But the days that I delay this coffee in the morning, and I'd say I'm 5 out of the 7 days, right? Full
Nice.
transparency.
Mhm.
I don't have that afternoon slump. So
That's
we
awesome.
remove the coffee just for a little bit, work your way up. Cold turkey doesn't work for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And then ultimately between that 60 to 90 minute mark, you're going to make the caffeine more effective. But what are we going to replace it with, Tommy? And that's where we're going to replace it with proper hydration, not water.
Yeah. Not
Yes,
just
water, but not
Yeah.
just water.
Yeah. We need to add some salt in there. Especially if your fasting time is
On a
probably
fasting day, especially.
for sure. Like if today is I'm going all day without food, then I'm not going to be bringing in any salt unless I supplement with that as well. So when you think I pretty much would draw the line at the sand in a line in the sand at about 16 hours. Like if I was going to do less than a 16-hour fast, I may not worry so much. Even then, I'd probably do a little bit of salt supplementation just because that's going to be a while. And going overnight, this is going to be helpful. So if you reached for half a gram to a gram of salt and brought that in first thing in the morning, you wouldn't have to worry about your salt supplementation so much the rest of the day. You don't have to feel like you're playing catch up at that point. And so bring that in with some water. You're helping to balance out what you've been cycling through. You've been cycling through and using up salt and water all throughout the night, all during your sleep cycle. And you need it for the regenerative processes that happen during sleep. So you're restoring balance at this point first thing, rather than the other way, which would be reaching for the caffeine, is pushing some of the imbalance that's natural. That's a natural part of the morning rhythm. So this is better. And so for me personally, I'm going to grab a little bit of Himalayan salt, like some crystals, and usually a packet of Element, and maybe put that in my in like some tea, or
Yep.
into some water, like maybe a grapefruit or something, into some water.
So I'm all about efficiency and simplicity. Just ask my
Mhm.
wife. It's annoying. I'm sure like when we're going on a trips, I'm like, no. Just get all of the stuff in a pile and I will fit it in the car. Right. Like
Yeah.
just no, let's not do it in pieces. Let's get it all ready. And then let me go do my thing. Right.
Hmm.
So I can hear some of the wives cringing as you're listening to this, or if the role is reversed sometimes, then vice versa. But
Yeah.
um, I like to do half a packet of LMNT and half a teaspoon of Redmond sea salt in a big
Mm,
40-ounce water. And I drink that before I get my coffee in now, most
nice.
days.
Yeah.
Um, better brain fog, easier fasting windows, no slump midday. Um, I will say this is much more important if you've had poor decisions or ate later or didn't close your window. I know we're not talking about
Yes.
fasting or food,
Yes. All right.
right?
Yeah.
But if you didn't have the greatest evening, you ate later than you normally do, had some alcohol, the
Yeah.
window didn't close, right? The
This
grazing
is
continued.
this is back to the peeling the face off of the
Yeah.
pillow right now. Yeah.
Um, you're only going to this is only going to make it better later in the day. It's
Yeah.
like, let's go back to college days. You got a hangover, the hair of the dog and a greasy burger from Burger King only made you feel better for like 30 minutes. And then you just delayed the pain that you're going to feel later in the afternoon.
Yeah. It's probably worse now. The
Maybe that was
afternoon's
just
probably
my
worse.
college experience. I mean, we're going back, my goodness, 25-year high school graduation's coming up here soon.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Wait, 99, 2009, 2000, yeah, 25 years this year. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, I just vomited in my mouth. Excuse me. Um, we're only going to delay it. So let's not delay it. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's do it strategically. So
Mhm.
let's go to the next component of this, which, because we went backwards to the night before, let's talk about sleep.
Okay.
So sleep is one of the non-food, non-fasting actions, right, that we can take. And, or one of the things that we should practice at getting better with in terms
Yeah.
of sleep.
Yeah.
Personally, it was one of my trifectas of the roller coaster, the never ending cycle of insulin resistance development.
Hmm.
We just recorded an episode last week, I believe, or the week before, where we talked about which came first, the chicken or the egg, the cart or the horse. Is it the insulin? Like, it's this perpetuating with leptin and insulin resistance. Once it starts and you have the
Hmm.
extra weight, it's hard to get off the crazy train.
Yeah.
Right. So we talked and strategized through that. But this sleep component is so incredibly important because, and on the Q&A we recently did, there was a question about when I have poor sleep, I then tend to go to worse foods. Well, if sleep is the problem, is food going to be the solution? No.
Mhm.
Sleep's the problem. Sleep needs to be the solution. And that's hard to digest. See what
Yep.
I did there?
Yep.
For us who wear the lack of sleep as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
So the stressed out, less sleep, I'll just power through type A
Or power
personality.
through. Maybe with some caffeine.
I'll sleep when I'm dead, maybe with some caffeine. That's why I want to connect sleep into this equation right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we've seen the research, and we've talked about it a few times about just an hour less of sleep, just not getting to that like 6.5 hour mark, and the 30% reduction in insulin sensitivity the next day, which is very, very, very problematic, because that lack of insulin sensitivity means my pancreas is going to be pushing out more insulin, throughout the day, which means that blood sugar levels are going to be more volatile. And then that's going to lead to some of those additional cravings and food thoughts and things that are, it's hard to be stress resilient when you feel like food is always like the only answer that you can almost think of, because the blood sugar levels are volatile and your resiliency is down at that point. And so that's tough. That's really tough to maintain a fasting lifestyle or to, hit the target that you set out for yourself, consistently over time. So what we can do there is we can understand that even if lack of sleep is your badge of honor, or even if you do function well, you figure out ways to function with that less sleep, prioritizing it can still be one of your superpowers and is absolutely going to accelerate fat loss process, a reversal of certain disease conditions. If you're using fasting for that, it's absolutely going to help bolster all of your efforts that you're using, when you go to break your fast and when you actually set your fasting timer too.
So sleep, for instance. So how do you start to manage this? Right. We know that less than 6.5 hours, multiple nights a week, blood sugar imbalances, which will lead to insulin drivers, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome. You can see these things in shift workers. If you are a shift worker, shout out to the frontline workers as well that keep the world going
Right.
in
Yeah.
emergencies and
Shout
as the
out.
rest of us rest. So thank you. Um, my dad was one of them. He did a lot of third shift work,
Mm,
third shift, kind of a hosh posh of that, working in the insane hours throughout the evening, depending on the day.
mm,
We've done episodes on that if that's you, but we want to just try to systematize this as much as possible. So if you want to increase your sleep by 30 minutes, don't just go to bed 30 minutes earlier or wake up 30 minutes later. That's probably not going to work. So you need to systematize, like, okay, start with a consistent bedtime and a consistent wake up time, right? Then go to our resource page and grab the sleep guide, get sunlight, work out in the morning. All of these other tactical things that you can do. Avoid blue light, get blue light block glasses, no phones or TVs in the rooms.
mm.
Make sure your room's cold, dark, all
Eat
of
a
those
little
different
earlier.
types of things. Eat a
Eat a
little
little earlier.
earlier, right? No food recommendations. We keep talking about it. Um, so sleep is incredibly important for this. I have a colleague that does boot camps, and they're weight loss boot camps. But when you actually get into it, there's no mention of food, meal plans, fasting windows, exercise, nothing. It's a sleep boot camp.
Yeah, I believe it. It's powerful.
How to lose weight by managing your sleep.
Yeah,
And it's insane.
it's
The
that
result, I'm
important.
like,
Yeah,
it's that important,
we don't want
right?
it to be that important. I didn't.
No, just like I don't want to delay my coffee on certain
Right.
days,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So that's the second one or third one, I guess. Um, so let's go into the next one, which is going to be the category of like mind body. Okay.
Okay.
A couple of cool research articles here that we want to mention. One is the effect of mind body exercise on risk factors for metabolic syndrome, including insulin resistance. This is a meta analysis. This came out in January of 2024. It's a systemic review. It's in the Frontiers in Endocrinology journal,
Mm,
and they looked at Web of Science, PubMed, the Cochrane Library, EBSCO, Host, Embase, China Knowledge Network, China Biomedical Literature, and a whole bunch of other words I can't pronounce. So 14 controlled trials with 1,148 participants. And what they found was insulin resistance, so mind body exercises such as yoga, Tai Chi, those types of things, significantly reduced insulin resistance in patients with metabolic syndrome. It also reduced body mass index substantially compared to the control group. It significantly reduced waist circumference. It significantly improved your fasting blood glucose levels,
wow.
triglycerides, and HDL. And the sensitivity test confirmed the stability of the meta-analysis results. So the findings are reliable and consistent across these different studies.
Wow. And this is one of those things that's kind of like sleep, where you go, it doesn't feel like a big lever, like at first glance, but when you start looking at data like this, then it's really hard to argue with. And you can this is one of those things where I think a lot of us who are in the, or who have ever done Eat Less Move More and more exercise, and doing more vigorous exercise, especially in an effort to accelerate the weight loss process. You might have overlooked something like a yoga or anything else that's kind of a mind body connection. I
Or
certainly did.
Pilates or a
Yeah.
bar or something like that, right?
Yeah, Tai Chi. I mean, all of these things. I haven't spent very much time doing these things, but when you start to get into it, you can start slowly, just like delaying your coffee, where you can go, okay, let me
Once
just
a
spend,
week.
yeah, once a week. Okay, start off with just a few minutes. It's gonna feel weird, but there's resources everywhere. There's
YouTube.
there's
You don't
great
have to go
YouTube
to a
channels.
class
Yeah,
anymore, right? And get all, 1980s, you get the leg warmers
right.
on. We don't even
Feeling
do
like
that anymore. You can literally
feeling like
do
you
it.
don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, you can
Walking
literally
in.
do it from get a yoga mat, or if
Yeah.
you don't want to do yoga, right? I'm going to talk about my own personal experience here in just a second. But yeah, you can absolutely do it just a few minutes a day, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Do that. And just a few minutes, it'll get easier, get more comfortable. You'll get more comfortable doing it. But the results are absolutely worth it. Like, it's a small investment of time for a big effect. And that's really cool. But the really great thing about any mind body connection like that is that it leads to remembering it and learning the techniques that are very easy to use in very small, like, micro doses later on throughout the day, if you will. Because when the little cortisol kicks hit you later, those little stressors that you were talking about earlier in the conversation, you can use these mind body techniques in small doses that help control the cortisol levels. They help control those feelings of frustration or urgency, where you have those urgent emotional hunger hits that can derail your fasting results. Well, guess what? Now you have more tools in your tool belt for those moments too. And that's so it's not only is it in the moment, but it kind of carries with you all throughout the day too.
It was interesting to see that this wasn't, if we're looking at the consistency here, I guess is the
Hmm.
word that I'm looking for, is that mind body exercises that fall under the entire category, right? We're going to talk about meditation here in just a second.
Hmm.
6 to 7 times per week. We're not talking go and do an hour and a half session, right? And sign up for the big package. If
Hmm.
yoga is something you like to do, if the lifestyle adaptation component of what we do here at Fasting for Life is really, you need to figure out the things you like to do that you're going to stay consistent with long term, because that's the answer for you, not your
Yeah.
neighbor, not your sister, not your brother, not your spouse. Like, that's what it is for you.
Yeah.
So, um, this isn't really rocket science that exercise is important for you, right?
Of course.
But the type of exercise that we've been led to believe that is going to help the scale move is not accurate. The eat less, move more mindset.
Mhm.
So, tailoring this to you, you're going to see those reductions in insulin resistance, waist circumference, improved blood pressure, lipid levels, etc., over the long term. If you're like me, going, I ain't doing that, that's not my solution, then I want to shift to the mindfulness exercise of meditation.
Mm.
And this is something, just like journaling, that I have fought throughout my personal and professional careers.
Mm.
Personal experience and professional careers. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but you know what I was trying to say there.
All right.
And
I got you.
this practice of meditation falls under the mindfulness component, right? So this was a study. This came out in 2018. This was the International Journal of Yoga, right? But it's not a study on yoga.
Okay.
It's a study on comparing yoga versus meditation. Okay. And the background was looking at coronary artery disease, right? Because it's the leading cause of morbidity and mortality. Combine it with stress, diabetes, hypertension. Those are in the etiology of the progression of this disease.
Mm-hmm.
So, how can meditation help, such as blood glucose and A1C and serum insulin levels, right, with CAD patients? So, at the end of the study, significant decrease was seen in patients who practice meditation as compared to the other group. This is in the Journal of Yoga. So, we just told you to go do yoga because it works,
All right.
because there's statistical significance.
Yeah.
We're not comparing apples to apples here. It's like red apples to green apples, right? Same
Mm.
category, same family.
Yeah.
But meditation, this is something you can find. There's apps, there's YouTube, there's something called heart math, where it's this device that measures your coherence or your heart rate variability. There's ways that you can do this, and we're talking like 7 to 10 minutes a day max. And you're going to see there's some studies, Tommy. I think you have one as well that you wanted to share, in regards to a 20 to 30% reduction in blood sugar and A1C levels in type 2 diabetics.
Yeah.
And we share that in our challenges, usually on day 6. So just incredible the power that we have in a short amount of time, because everybody's stressed, everybody, all the stuff we're talking about today. Nobody has time. Well, we need to figure out how we're going to make time.
Sure.
So starting with small, low threshold practices, right? It doesn't take you a lot of energy to go, sit and close your eyes and practice the art of meditation. Now, in the beginning, it's going to be really awkward, and it was for me too.
Yeah.
But there's different techniques, like concentrate on your body, concentrate on your breathing, distress to stress. Whenever you feel that thought coming up, listen to the sounds around you, practice forgiveness, all of those different types of things. So you just need to try it on for size and see how it feels.
Yeah, I like a 5-minute timer personally, and sometimes I'll do 2 of them. But
nice.
That's just like a really digestible chunk where I go, okay, I'm gonna close my eyes for 5 minutes, and there will be certain things that I it's like just focusing on just keeping the mind clear is the way that, like, I can feel the calmness. I can feel the blood pressure drop. I haven't taken my blood sugar before and after these things, but I can absolutely see why the research supports little things like this. And those are things that you can input at any point, during your day, or you can kind of schedule them ahead of time. So I like to just, kind of use those on an as needed basis a few times a week. And I find it very helpful. But it's not something that I used to do, probably 3 or 4 years ago or beyond that. Cause it felt like another one of those things, like journaling or some other things where I go, that's not going to move the needle. That sounds silly or something. And then just kind of, shuffled on past that. But these things have been very, very, very helpful for sure.
All right. So the last one here, Tommy, we did an entire episode on this. So we're not going to go down and digest for a podcast that was going to talk a lot about non-fasting, non-food. We've said the word digest in food a lot.
Yeah, sure. We always do.
Right. But these are the top 5, 7. How many we're at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think we're going to be on 8 now. Right. This is the top practices, non-food, non-fasting practices to help regulate blood sugar, reduce insulin resistance, get better results with your fat loss with a fasting lifestyle. So the last one is something that I've become much more consistent with since the beginning of the year. And you know what? I want to add in sauna and cold plunging. Not from the blood sugar side of things, but from the cardiovascular risk side of things. So sauna been shown to decrease cardiovascular risk, relative and absolute cardiovascular risk. The numbers do not lie. Cold plunge, for me, it's a dopamine thing. These are 2 things that have really helped me with this mind-body component that we've been talking about. I just wanted to mention them before we shift.
Love both of those.
Right into the sleep component, not a direct correlation to the blood sugar side of things, but overall health, mindset type stuff. But this last one is walking, and we did a deep dive on it. And this study, I remember it being really interesting because you've probably heard, and we know, like the women, like the glucose goddess, right? She talks about postprandial, like biohacks, optimizers for your fasting lifestyle, right? So I don't like the word hack. It just has this weird connotation for me. Like, why are we hacking something? Can I optimize it? Can I just do it? Get the benefit? Can we make it positive? So this walk post meal, tons of research backing up that the walk post meal will decrease your postprandial, meaning post meal blood sugar. Incredibly powerful for pre-diabetics and diabetics, or people that have metabolic syndrome or diagnosed insulin resistance. But overall, it allows you to do some of these mind body things, right, while you're walking. If you're someone like me that doesn't like walking, you can combine some things here. Remember, we talked about if you remove a habit, you need to put something else in its place. Absolutely. Well, I also like tandem habits, right? You I used to get on the rower and row for 30 to 60 minutes. And that's when I would watch the replay of a basketball game or a Netflix show or something. I'd combine
Mhm.
temptation bundling is what it's
Yeah,
called. Right. But specifically with walking, the study was cool because it's like, well, I don't have 30 to 45 minutes to walk. I'm like, okay,
of course.
well then bundle it with something. And or the study said what, Tommy, which blew our minds at the time.
Yeah, it was that if you split those up into smaller walks throughout the day, that's actually going to be more effective anyway. So if you did three 15-minute walks versus one 45-minute walk, you'll actually have a better benefit with the multiple 15-minute walks, which is cool because it's not just like a 1+1=2, but it's like 1+1=3 at that point. Because when you split those up, you tend to have different blood sugar spikes throughout the day, especially if you're eating multiple times a day. Then it can be very helpful to put those walks on the back ends of those meals to really help lower the area under the curve for blood sugar and for insulin.
100%. So for me, I call them my hot girl walks. My wife just shakes her head at me.
That's so fun.
I know it's so terrible, right? Um, but I've noticed that, on the days that I do them, there's a lot of positive research on. We did an episode way back in the 10,000 steps to nowhere, right? That was just a
Mhm.
marketing campaign out of Japan, if I recall.
Yeah,
That there was really no data behind 10,000 steps, and everybody got on the Fitbit craze and whatever it
right.
was, and
It's a nice round number.
yeah, so steps are great for neat non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It's like the low intensity steady state optimizer, excuse me, of weight loss. Just
Mm,
walk. Never mind, does it have a drastic effect on your blood sugar? Um, so we do family walks, which don't really. We have little ones. It doesn't really turn into a walk. It turns more into like a
meander.
sweaty crying fest,
Yeah.
meander, right? Um,
Zigzag.
a zigzag, right?
Yeah.
Somehow I'm carrying all of the things they were riding.
Right.
And so I notice on the days that I do these walks that my mental side of things is better, that I
Mm,
feel better, that I don't have as many cravings. And if I'm breaking a longer fast and I have a larger meal, then going for a walk, I just feel better overall.
yeah.
And if you can't do 30 to 45 minutes to get your steps in, because I do it for the steps, because there is research that shows about 6 to 7,000 steps a day, because we
Mhm.
sit more than ever, especially me. I sit like all day long
Mm,
um, during the week. It's like I want to make sure I'm getting those steps in for long term health benefit. But if you're going to temptation bundle it, let's attack the blood sugar as well
yeah.
when we break our fast, which is why I love this walking conversation.
Yeah, great point. And then if you're going into your evening time and starting to get ready for your sleep cycle, the better control over insulin and blood sugar that you have going into that time, and the less you feel like you're still having to digest dinner or maybe even lunch if you're a slow digester, is all the better for setting yourself up for a really for a much better night's sleep and for an easier time, getting to sleep, which then is then going to lead into the next day as well as setting your next fasting timer too. So these, each day really does connect to the next, which is why we don't think about things as just one kind of one fast at a time. Like, well, what's the perfect fast, that kind of thing. We need to develop ways that we link from one day to the next, which supports this as a fasting lifestyle versus a fasting for a diet. Let's say, for example.
Tommy, was there another research article that you wanted to share? Um,
I think when we were talking about the coffee, I think I forgot to mention the fact that I did find some studies that showed a nice decrease in blood sugar levels in the morning with pushing off that caffeine, because you tend to, especially if you have some level of insulin resistance, you tend to drive up blood sugar at some point in the morning, depending on if it's in line with your wake cycle or not. At some point you're probably going to have a morning blood sugar spike, and it might be from the overnight, which is normal, but at the same time it might be exaggerated. And the last thing that we want to do is push that exaggeration further, which we might be doing with our coffee, our early caffeine. And
mhm.
so just pushing it off, they found a 7 to 10% drop in blood sugar levels for people with blood sugar, like insulin resistance, some type 2 diabetics in that study as well.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was a definite great finding that we can use to push into that habit.
that's another, okay, I know the benefit. I need a
Mhm.
little more reassurance on why I'm going to
Yeah.
delay my coffee, right? That falls
Yeah.
into the dangle the carrot category.
Yeah.
So
In
good,
the
good, good,
dang it,
good.
the dang it category.
The dang it
Oh
and
man,
dangle the dang carrot
yeah.
category,
There is
right?
a good reason to do it, man.
Delay that gratification.
Yeah.
Yes, there's multiple good reasons. I like it. I like it. All right. So we talked through hydration, salt, minerals, stress resiliency, delaying coffee, walking, breaking it up, making it more sustainable, sleep prioritization, mind body exercise, meditation, yoga. So many things, right? In terms of the top non-food, non-fasting actions that you can take to get better results, better blood sugar, less insulin resistance, reverse those metabolic conditions, ultimately get better fat loss results, and adopt a fasting lifestyle. I added some stuff there. But I want you to focus on, as we kind of wrap up today, is what is one or two things that you're going to do? Pick one. Go do it right now. Don't wait. If you're like literally driving, pull over, find a park, go for a walk.
Yeah.
Do something now so you can get that dopamine hit, right? And rewire the way you're going to start consciously thinking about this
Yeah.
to pattern interrupt. So if you're looking for more support, you can head to the show notes. You can click the free Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss 20-page PDF. We'll zoom it to your email. That's yours. We've got resources on the website, thefastingforlife.com. We've got our insulin assessment, our sleep guide. If you want to be in a conversation of like-minded fasters that talk about fasting 24/7, you
Yeah.
can head to the Fasting for Life community and or join one of our Master Your Fasting challenges that we do throughout the calendar. So Tommy,
Yeah.
appreciate the conversation, sir. Think it was a good one. Think it's going to make an impact. And we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Thank you. Bye.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life. While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.